arc flash in circuit breaker panels, causes, effects, and solutions. Presenter is myself, Mubarak Khan. I am currently country head of Streamer Electric AG. So there is a small conversation between some components of the circuit breaker panel and Firepress, and I am talking on behalf of Firepress. As you can see in this particular slide, that the component says, "Why are you looking at me like that? I didn't do anything. Come on." So Firepress says, "I know what you did, and my friends will take care of you for sure." And that friend of is me. Okay, so we'll see how we'll do it and how things are going to move. I hope you'll enjoy the session. So let's start who we are. The company name is Streamer Electric AG. It is a Switzerland-based company based out in Zurich, Switzerland. It was founded in 1996, having operation with 5 universities and R&D offices, having 6 offices and 77 distributors in 26 countries. Having around 180 employees of 9 nationalities in 6 different countries. In 2012, the headquarters was moved to Switzerland. Okay. So this is basically what is a circuit breaker. So basically there are a lot of electrical panels inside our plant, factory, machinery area, etc. And all these electrical panels contain circuit breakers. There are so many different kind of circuit breakers. In small applications, we have MCCB, molded case circuit breaker, or we have a MCB, miniature circuit breaker, which are really very small, right? Then we have bigger ones, air circuit breaker, vacuum circuit breaker, and then some old technology were also using oil circuit breaker. I have seen today also, I just last week, I was in a visit in a thermal power plant. There I saw they were still using oil circuit breakers. So there are various types of circuit breakers and are suitable for various applications. Okay, nowadays most common ones are SF6 also. People are trying to go for SF6 circuit breakers. Okay, so these are the circuit breakers which are used as a switch to switch on or off power supply or to act as a safety between the two circuits. Okay. Okay, so circuit breakers, as you can see, this is a full unit of a circuit breaker. This is a snapshot of a circuit breaker from close-up one, as you can see, and these are the circuit breakers. So as you can see, there are 2 ways in which the circuit breaker connections are made. One is this jaw connection, and these are known as the tulip contacts. So we'll see these things in detail, but anyway, these are the various types of large circuit breakers which are a matter of concern for us. Okay, so as we saw this slide before also, circuit breaker contains outgoing bus bars, circuit breaker itself, and incoming cables. As you can see here, this is a bus bar chamber. So the bus bars are going out. This is normally in normal conditions. This is actually the outgoing of the circuit. Okay, and then this is cable chamber. In cable chamber, there are circuit breaker and its connections, the outgoing cables, etc. And in the circuit breaker chamber, there are circuit breaker and its connections. And this is the image of a bus bar chamber, okay, where we have outgoing bus bars, and we can see there are electrical joints present at these locations. Okay, joint 1, joint 2, joint 3. This is the place where the circuit breaker outgoing connections are connected, and here it is going out to other circuits. Okay, so in some cases this is the incomer side, incoming bus bar, and in some cases this is the outgoing side. Okay, so depending on the different type of configuration what is required, the bus bar side can be incoming or outgoing. Okay. Circuit breaker connections normally, now coming to the circuit breaker area, this is a circuit breaker. In circuit breaker, there are the part where the connections are made are these one, which are known as tulip contacts or jaw connections or the spring loaded joints. Okay, tulip contacts, jaw connection of the spring loaded joint. If you see close up, it looks like this. These are the links which are spring loaded, and they come and get connected very tight on the other female part. Okay, so This is spring-loaded joint connections for the circuit breaker. Okay. I am just giving you a brief description of a circuit breaker just to understand what challenges we may face in a circuit breaker. So it's easy. It's better to understand it first. Okay. And this is more close-up view of circuit breaker tulip connections. In this type of connection, the tulip connection is like this, and it looks in this way. Okay, you can see my mouse moving. And here these are some old designs where we have jaw connections, and jaw connections, they look like this. Both are actually two different technologies. One is for round bus bar, one is for flat bus bar, but both are spring-loaded connections. Okay. Then we have cable terminations. Okay. Cable terminations, normally they are at the other end of the circuit breaker connection, where cables are connected, incoming cables are coming and connected on the bus. Okay. Now these cable connections can be in the LT switchboard like 440 volt. It can be in a cable LA in this way, and then in a circuit breaker panel, large panels, it can be of these types. Sometimes it is well maintained and it is clean and nice and tidy. Sometimes it may be very much dirty because of dust, etc. Okay, so both conditions are there. So these are the cable terminations. Different type of panels have different type of cable terminations. Okay. So now let us see, we have seen what are the different type of joints which are there in a circuit breaker panel. Now we will see what is a loose connection and what are its effects. Okay. Loose connection, it can be because of poor mechanical connections. Means poor mechanical connections, poor electrical connections may show up when connections are not tight or dirt or other contaminations come between the contact surfaces. Okay. Or it can be because of oxidation at the connections. Under the influence of oxygen, air, nitrogen, ozone and other chemicals on the contact surface, contacts get oxidized. Oxidation increases the resistance, hence increases the overheating. Okay. At high temperatures, copper normally reacts with the normal atmosphere, and the copper oxide film is formed on top of the copper. Okay. Now, if it is a bus bar joint, so then because of this film, the joint connection resistance will increase, which can cause a further heating. More heating will cause more increase in resistance. Okay. Now we'll take a simple example of how a loose connection can convert into heat. So we'll take an example of a 240 volt power supply supplying to a heating element through a terminal block and a circuit breaker. Okay. Under normal conditions, the current will be 240 by 12, which is equal to 20 amperes, right? The 12 ohm is the resistance of the heater, and there is no other resistance available anywhere in the circuit. Okay. The power dissipated in the heater will be 240 into 20, that is the current. 240 is the voltage, so it will be 4800 watts. The power dissipated in the terminal block and the power dissipated in the circuit breaker will be equal to 0 because there is no contact resistance there. Now, under abnormal conditions, when connections are not tight, let us take an example of a loose connection at the terminal block. Okay, so here in the second image, we can see in this terminal block there is a loose connection, and the effective resistance of the loose connection is around 12 ohms. We took 12 ohms just for the simplicity of the calculation. Okay, so for let us consider the resistance increase at the joint because of loose connection is equal to 12 ohms. Now under this condition, what will happen? The 240 volt power supply will be trying to supply to the whole circuit. So when the voltage is applied, this voltage will be divided on the terminal block as well as the heating element. And because both are 12 ohms, the voltage also will be divided equally. Okay. So around 120 volt will be dissipated, will be available at the terminal block, and 120 volt will be available at the heating element. Now, secondly, now we have 120 volt at the terminal block and 120 volt at the heating element. Secondly, if we try to see the current which is going to pass through this circuit, so the total loop resistance of this circuit is 12 ohms at the heating element plus 12 ohm of the loose connection. Both together will come to 24, right? 240 volt power supply is supplying to a 24 ohm resistive circuit. It will cause a 10 amperes of current to flow. So the loop current will be 10 amperes and the voltage at terminal block and the heating element will be 120 volts. Now, if we try to calculate the power, so power dissipated in the heater will be voltage into current, that is 120 into 10, which will be equal to 1200 watts. Power dissipated in the terminal block will also be equal to 120 into 10, that is 1200 watts. Now, the heater is designed to withstand a large amount of energy. So, this 1200 watts of energy will get converted to heat in the heater, and heater will heat. It will not heat as effectively as it was heating before in the healthy condition, but still it will heat and nothing will happen to the heater. But same amount of energy is getting dissipated on the terminal block. Now the terminal block contains small leads and it is not designed to withstand that much amount of energy. So what will happen is, when there is a restriction to the flow of electrons, or when there is a restriction to the flow of current, the heat will be produced, and that heat can become sufficiently enough to cause fire if there is any fuel present in the close vicinity. What is the normal fuel which is present inside the panel? It is the PVC insulation of the cable. At around 200 to 50 ohms, at around 200 to 50 degrees Celsius, your PVC starts to melt and starts to burn. Okay. So the PVC may start to burn and it can cause a fire inside the panel. Now, if the temperature increases further, then there can be more disasters, which we will see in the further steps. Okay. As we saw, the loose connection can cause overheating, and I explained 2 slides back. When there is an overheating in a copper bus bar, at high temperatures, the copper reacts with the ambient atmosphere. The copper reacts with the ambient atmosphere, and a copper oxide film is formed on top of the copper layer. Now, because of this film, the contact resistance increases. So as we saw, loose connection caused overheating, overheating caused oxidation, oxidation caused again increase in resistance. This increase in resistance will cause more overheating, which will cause more oxidation, and again it will cause more increase in resistance. And it will be a cyclic effect. Because of this, the temperature of the bus bar can increase sufficient enough for the bus bar to melt. This is known as the thermal runaway fire hazard in electrical panel. This is one of the most important slides of today's presentation. Okay, so we saw how a loose connection can cause melting of the bus bar. Okay, we'll see this in more detail in further slides. Okay, let us first consider a normal scenario, how it happens inside a electrical panel. In an electrical panel, there are 2 types of loose connections. One, connections are very loose. Like they are very loose. So as soon as you start the system, the connection will start to heat and it will burn, or it will be detected, whatever. Right? Let us consider a scenario when connection is not very loose, it is insufficiently tightened. So under this scenario, if the load is low, then there will not be any heating. But if the load increases, maybe in overload condition or full load condition, when the load increases, the temperature of the joint will increase. And when the load reduces, the temperature of the joint will also reduce. Okay, we have taken such a scenario, okay, where contacts are insufficiently tightened. Under normal conditions, the temperature of the joint, depending on the ambient atmosphere, the temperature of the joint will be around 25 to 70, 80 degrees Celsius. Okay, under normal conditions, depending on the ambient atmosphere. When the load increases, the temperature of the joint will increase. It will go to 80, 70, 90, whatever, right? It will increase a little. When the load clears, the temperature of the joint will reduce. It will come down. In this cycle, when the temperature increased and came down once, in this cycle, the contacts got deteriorated. Because of heating and cooling, you saw that oxidation effect. Because of the oxidation, the quality of the contacts went down. When the next time the load comes, the heating will be more than before. Okay, initially it heated only up to 85, for example. This time it will heat up to 110 or something. Okay. Now again, after some time, the load will be cleared and the temperature will come down. Again, after some time, maybe few months, few days, whatever, when the load increases, the temperature will increase. So this temperature increase and decrease will happen multiple times throughout the life cycle of the joint, and a time will come when the contacts will get sufficiently degraded that it will start to heat continuously. Okay, when this happens, the temperature of the joint will start to increase. So it will increase beyond 80, beyond 100, beyond 130. It will go to around 180, 190 degrees Celsius, where your PVC insulation will start to melt. It will cause a small fumes inside the panel. Okay, the PVC insulation will melt. On further temperature, there will be small fumes coming out of the PVC. Then there will be, if the temperature increases further, there will be fire, smoke, and sustained combustion will occur. So this is how the loose connection is converted to fire. Okay, this is the cycle. Now, as we saw in this presentation, the 25 to 70 degrees Celsius is the normal temperature zone. This is the normal temperature at which most of the electrical circuits or joints are operating. At 80 to 180 degrees Celsius, this is the temperature where system is not normal. It is not causing any harm, like PVC will melt beyond 180. So it will not cause any harm, but still it is not normal, right, in this zone. So, and then after that it is hazardous, so it will cause damages. If we take this 80 to 180 and divide by 50, so between 80 to 130, the zone comes between 80 to 130. If we are able to detect that abnormality in this zone, in the safe zone, where it is not normal, it is abnormal but not hazardous. So if we are able to detect the abnormality in this zone, we will be able to detect any upcoming fire or arc flash scenario. Okay, and that is what our focus should be. Now, how a loose connection can convert to an arc flash? Okay, that is an important thing to understand. Okay, under normal conditions, when the load is de-energized, the temperature of the joint will be something, suppose temperature T degrees Celsius. Okay, when the load is switched on, the temperature will increase a little bit. So T plus delta T, for example, just it will increase a little bit. When the load is going to a full load, then the temperature of the joint will increase further. Okay. If there is a loose connection, then the temperature of the joint will increase further, more, right? When the loose connection is there and the contacts are getting deteriorated after completing all the 3 cycles, it can be 3, 6, 8 or 1, doesn't matter. After completing all the abnormal cycles, when the contacts are getting deteriorated, okay, after the contacts are getting deteriorated, then the temperature will increase further. The temperature will increase up to such an extent which is sufficient to cause a fire, around 180, 200, 250 degrees Celsius. The temperature is sufficient enough to cause fire. Okay. After that, if the temperature is increasing again, there will be immense overheating which can cause the metal to become red hot. Okay. Then if it heats further at 1100 degrees Celsius, the copper bus bar, if there is a copper conductor or a bus bar, at 1100 degrees Celsius, the copper will melt. At 700 degrees Celsius, aluminum will melt. Okay, so aluminum is having a very low short circuit capacity or low mechanical strength as compared to copper. Okay, so at 700 degrees Celsius, the aluminum will melt. At 1100 degrees Celsius, copper will melt. When the copper melts, what will happen is the conductor will melt and it will fall down. When it falls down in a bus bar, in a circuit breaker panel, the circuit breaker is intended to carry a heavy amount of current, 100, 200, 500, 1000, 2000, 5000 amperes. And this bus bar is carrying that much amount of current. If the circuit breaker is breaking, that heavy current is getting interrupted. When this heavy current gets interrupted, at that time, this current will try to continue to flow as it is its natural tendency. So it will cause a flash there. Okay, and then when the molten metal falls down, at that time there will be a heavy arc flash whose temperature can go up to 20,000 degrees Celsius, and it will be really huge. This flash will be really big. Okay. So arc flash is having a very high temperature, a very high pressure and very high sound. Okay. Arc flash, the temperature is around 20,000 to 36,000 degrees Celsius. Some specifications, some people say 20,000, some people say 36,000. But one common thing known about it is that around this temperature is around 4 times the temperature of the surface of the sun. This temperature can vaporize almost everything. Whatever, any known material will vaporize at this temperature. Okay, this is a very, very high temperature. Okay. Again, when the metal, which is a dense particle, when it vaporizes, it will definitely expand. Okay, when the metal vaporizes, it expands at 67,000 times. Okay, of its actual volume. Now, if a small metal is expanding 67,000 times, a sudden expansion of air causes immense pressure, resulting a shock wave that can throw people across the room. It's like a bomb blast. Okay, the molten metal, it expands very rapidly. It causes a immense pressure. Okay. Now, the debris which is flowing around, the explosive force can form an arc blast, which can exceed around 100 kilopascal, causing propulsion of molten metals or arc sprays. These arc sprays droplets of molten metal are traveling at the speed of 700 miles per hour. Okay, this can easily penetrate any standard PPE. All right. So this is the disaster and danger of an arc flash. The arc blast has a sound of 140 dB near the arc, which can easily cause permanent hearing damage. This is beyond any sound level which humans can withstand. If God forbid, if somebody witnesses arc flash, it is very rare that he will survive. Okay. What are the causes of arc flash? There can be equipment failure, dropping of uninsulated tools or metal parts on between the phases or phase to ground. Okay. Using incorrectly specified instruments, live work on damaged equipment such as cables, loose connections and explosive exposed live parts, lack of awareness and training. Okay, these are the various causes of the arc flash. Now, if you analyze all these causes, there are 3 main parts: human error, machinery failure, or loose connection. Okay, so machinery failure is unfortunate. We can do a proper maintenance and we'll be able to maintain it properly to save it from happening, or we can do a proper condition monitoring. Okay, when human error, so we can put best practices in place. Okay, and we can avoid this. But what about the loose connection? These are the inherent feature of the electrical circuit and joints to cause loose connection. Like, it can happen anytime. Somebody can keep it loose because of vibration, the joints can become loose or whatever, right? These loose connections can come anytime. There is one more cause of such an arc flash that is not mentioned here. That is in a vacuum circuit breaker, the vacuum bottle, it fails, causes a flash. Okay, that is also one of the causes. But anyway, these are the operational parts. You cannot do anything. You need to just maintain and do it. But loose connection is the place where this is normally happening and we are not able to avoid it. So this is a condition monitoring issue now. All others are best practices or good equipment issue, but loose connection is a condition monitoring issue. It can happen to any type of equipment. No matter you buy the equipment from Siemens or Marvin Switchgear or any small or big company. Okay, loose connection is a physical thing which can happen anytime to anyone. You cannot avoid it. So the only way to protect yourself from it is to be aware if the loose connection is there, to get it informed. Okay. So how to prevent arc flashes caused by loose connections? Let us try to understand them. Hierarchy of preventive measures. Use a good quality equipment. As I mentioned, use a good quality equipment. Tighten connections with TOX panels. Okay, use effective condition monitoring and condition-based maintenance. So good quality equipment, tighten connections, and use good condition monitoring. Good condition monitoring means it can be like we'll discuss in later. Okay. Now condition monitoring can be of various stages. We can do various stages of condition monitoring. We do. There is a method where we can do 24/7 monitoring with 24/7 alert. Online overheating monitoring system which can monitor overheating of all electrical joints and gives an alert or control when the joints get overheated. Okay, so it will do a 24/7 monitoring and give you an alert 24/7. Whenever it occurs, immediately it will inform you that the joints had got overheated. There is another method, a second priority, which is 24/7 monitoring and periodic alert. Monitoring of electrical joints using visual thermolabels. The overheating will be monitored continuously, but the maintenance personnel will get alert when they physically inspect the thermolabels. Okay, this is second category, second way of doing it. The third way of doing it is periodic monitoring and periodic alert. Monitoring of electrical joints using thermal imaging cameras. The overheating will be inspected only at the time of inspection. Okay. So my personal best, I like 24/7 monitoring and 24/7 alert because it is 100% sure that it will save you 100% from the loose connection issues. Okay. Second priority is 24/7 monitoring and periodic alert. So if you don't have funds or it is very small or non-critical panel or some open areas, you can use the periodic alert. Okay. Thermal imaging, okay, it can also detect overheating, but not the electrical overheating which is causing damages of this scale. Okay. Now coming to 24/7 monitoring and 24/7 alert, the solution, I'll introduce one solution for each category. So from 24/7 monitoring and 24/7 alert, let us introduce FirePress. Okay. FirePress contains three main components. Remote Fire Prevention Thermolabel RFPT, Fire Prevention Alarm FPA, and Fire Prevention Concentrator FPC. Okay, we will discuss each one by one. RFPTs are installed at contact connection points on the electrical joints, on electrical wires, and some parts of the electrical equipment which are potentially prone to overheating. When heated to activation temperature, a signal gas is emitted from the RFPT or the sticker and is detected by the fire prevention alarm. Okay. So as we saw, these RFPTs will be installed on the electrical joints. Okay. And this FPA will be installed in the cabinet, electrical cabinet. So whenever there is an overheating at the joint, the temperature of the joint will increase. This will cause a release of a signal gas at a particular temperature, okay, threshold value. A signal gas will be released, which will fill the compartment with that gas. There will be a FPA which will be saved, installed inside the cabinet, which will sense the presence of the gas and communicate it to FPC. So we'll see in further slides. Let us see a little bit more about the stickers. The thermolabel stickers contain, apart from the set point at which the gas is released, it contains three pre-indication dots. Okay, so if the set point of the sticker is 100 degrees Celsius, there will be pre-indication dot at 50, 70 and 90 degrees. Okay, so whenever the temperature of the joint reaches 50 degrees Celsius, the 50-degree dot will change its color to black irreversibly. When the temperature of the joint reaches 70 degrees Celsius, then the 70-degree dot will change its color to black irreversibly. When the temperature of the joint reaches 90 degrees Celsius, the 90-degree dot will change its color to black irreversibly. When the temperature reaches 100 degree, at that time the signal gas will be released and you will get a remote alarm. Okay, so this is the function of the sticker. Okay, in this particular sticker, the signal gas is stored inside in the form of microcapsules. The outer layer of the microcapsules is calibrated to the set point temperature. Okay, so that is the function. RFPTs are coming in various sizes. So for small cabinets, we have small RFPTs. So it contains very small amount of gas, which can fill a small compartment. So if your compartment size is big, then we will need a big stickers. Okay. Now coming to the second component, which is FPA. As mentioned, these FPAs needs to be installed inside the cabinet, okay, to sense the presence of the gas. It detects the threshold concentration of the signal gas in a protected object. It transmits the alarm code. When the alarm is generated, it transmits the signal via RS-485 to the FPC, the third component, FPC. Okay. This RS-485 can also be used for your existing DCS, SCADA, PLC system for local current alarm monitoring system. You can use the RS-485 directly. Okay. There is a dry contact output which can get activated when the alarm is triggered. So this dry contact output can be used for local annunciation or some controls if you require. There is a dry contact output. When the alarm comes, the contact changes its position. Okay. There is a LED indicator on the FPA itself which gives the current status of the FPA, which is ready, alarm, error, and communication. Okay. It is a self-calibrated device and it does not require any calibration. Okay, so this is how it looks and these are the features. There is one multi-channel FPA in which there are 4 sensors. So with one FPA, you can monitor up to 4 cabinets, or you can monitor a very large cabinet with a one sensor, one FPA. Okay. So I'm not going in much details. We can have a further discussion on various features of Firepress later. Okay, we can discuss. So I'll just cover this one. Now coming to the third component, which is FPC, Fire Prevention Concentrator. So Fire Prevention Concentrator, basically all the data from all the FPAs is connected to FPC via RS-485, and FPC is displaying the alarm status, the error status, and the current running status of all the FPAs. Whenever there is an alarm, the FPA displays the alarm code. It also stores the alarm history for the further records and inspection. When the alarm comes, there is a LED light and buzzer which is glowing in the FPA. Okay, you can check, reset, and save the alarms. Okay, when an alarm comes, the alarm will be ringing continuously unless the gas is escaped. Okay, there is one more feature in the FPA, that it can send an SMS to the duty staff. If this feature is required, it can be made available. Okay. So this is a complete system configuration where RFPT, which is remote fire prevention thermolabel. RFPTs will be installed on the contact connection points or some parts of electrical equipment which are potentially prone to overheating. It will be placed very near to the joint so that it can work at nearly same temperature of the joint. Okay. When the joints get overheated, a signal gas will be emitted from the sticker, which will be filled inside the compartment with a particular gas concentration. Okay. Then we have a device known as FPA, which will be placed in the same compartment, which will sense the presence of the gas and give you a remote alarm directly or through FPC. Okay. This is an electrical system layout. Just to explain, in this particular, I have taken an example of a panel with one incomer panel, 2 outgoing, and 1 busbar compartment. So stickers will be placed at the incoming and outgoing of the circuit breaker. As you can see, the orange strips are all the RFPTs. Okay. Then we have used a multi-channel FPA. In a multi-channel FPA, the sensors will be placed inside the compartment. 1 sensor, 2, 3, 4 sensors. Okay. And then these sensors will be connected to FPA. Multiple FPAs will be connected together through RS-485 network, which can be connected to FPC via RS-485. Okay, so this is the electrical configuration, just for you to visualize more easily how it works. Okay. Now, these are some images of the application. Now, this is because it is a new technology and people are not aware of it. That is why I'm just trying to make you understand and visualize how it really works. Okay. So in a 440 volt or 220 volt panel, the stickers can be placed on the joints and FPA can be placed in the same compartment. In a MCC, PCC type of panels where there are multiple compartments, we can have sensors in each compartment. As you can see, these are the sensors. We can have sensors in each compartment. RFPD is installed at all the joints and which can be communicated to FPC. Here you can see images of the stickers, images of the sensor, the multi-channel FPA. Okay, so these are the all photographs. This is 6.6 kV, 11 kV type of panel where we have a circuit breaker, high voltage circuit breaker. Okay, so there will be incoming cable compartment, circuit breaker compartment, and metering compartment. So we will use one multi-channel FPA, place sensors in different compartments, and place stickers on all the joints, and then we can monitor the one circuit breaker panel with the single. Okay. Now, normally how we install the RFPD, so we normally wrap it around the conductor, busbar, cable, etc. So in a small cable, it can be wrapped like this. In a busbar, it can be wrapped like this. In a circuit breaker jaw connection, it should be wrapped like this. It is wrapped so that it doesn't fall down because of this. That's it. Otherwise, it can work in any way. It is wrapped only to ensure that it is not falling down. Moreover, while wrapping, we normally prefer that the thermo indication dots are at the visible angle, so that if the temperature increases, you should be able to see the dots changing its color. Okay, at visible. Now coming to the second type of monitoring, that is 24/7 monitoring and periodic alert. Okay, first we saw 24/7 monitoring and 24/7 alert. Now we are seeing 24/7 monitoring and periodic alert. So it can be done through a visual fire prevention thermolabels. VFPD allows to check the quality of installation works by visual inspection. These are also stickers of PVC. We can wrap them around the electrical joints or the surfaces where we want to monitor the temperature. If the temperature of the joint or the surface increases beyond the set point of the sticker, the color of the sticker changes from white to black. So as you can see in this example, this is a yellow sticker with white stripes. And when the temperature increases beyond 90 degrees Celsius, it is yellow sticker on black stripes on a yellow sticker. So black stripes on yellow sticker is highly visible combination. So that is what it comes when the stickers are operating. Okay, so these are very simple application. You just wrap it, and when the temperature increases, you will be able to see. So normally it works 24/7 because it is continuously installed on the panel. It is continuously installed on the joint. So at any point of time, if the temperature increases, the color will change irreversibly. So it will not change back. Second point, that whenever somebody goes for inspection, he will be able to witness that the color has already changed. Okay, so it is 24/7 monitoring and periodic alert. Now coming to the third, periodic monitoring and periodic alert. That is through thermography. Most of us are aware of thermography, how it works. It is basically a camera, which is like a gun, which looks like a gun, smaller combinations, and the bigger ones are like a digital camera. Okay, you can just simply take that camera, go near the joints or the areas where we want to do the temperature inspection, and you can visually see. So normally what we see and what our normal camera sees is the light band, frequency band. And what thermal imaging camera sees, it sees the infrared band. Okay, where at temperatures the radiations are at different frequencies. So thermal imaging camera can see that band of frequencies. Okay, so in a thermal imaging camera, the color of the different areas or points will be separated or changed according to the temperature. The hot areas will be a different color. The cold areas will be a different color. If the whole area is at the same temperature, we'll see a single temperature. All of this. Okay? This is a thermal imaging. So it is a periodic monitoring and periodic alert. Only at the moment of inspection, if there is a heating, it will detect or it will not. Now preventive detection. Okay. If we are using 24/7 monitoring, 24/7 alert, or 24/7 monitoring, periodic alert, or periodic monitoring, periodic, in all cases, we'll be able to detect the abnormalities in this zone, 80 to 130, which was our aim. But the only thing is that the accuracy and reliability is different in all the three. Okay? I hope you remember this graph. I explained this graph in detail, and our motive was to detect the abnormality in this safe zone. And this is how we do it. I showed you 3 methods. Now, if you have installed a continuous monitoring system and you detected the abnormality in when the temperature first reached 100 degrees Celsius and you detected the abnormality, you can do the repairs and make the system normal and it will remain normal. Okay, that is why then there will be no hazards of loose connection. So first time you detect it, you go and tighten the connection, take the corrective action, and the system will become safe and normal. Okay, let us compare the three things. I'll just read it out for you to understand. There are various ways and conditions which are being considered for this. Okay, so let us compare the functionality of VFPD, which is visual stickers, then FirePress, which is remote monitoring system, and thermography. Okay, monitoring of overheating. Is it doing the monitoring of overheating? Yes. VFPD, yes. FirePress, yes. Thermography, yes. Is it doing online 24/7 monitoring of the equipment? VFPD, yes, it is doing. FirePress, yes, it is doing. Thermography, no, it is not doing 24/7 online monitoring. Okay. Now, is it showing 24/7 alert? I'll just pause for a minute and I'll come back because my battery is getting low. I'll put on the charger. Okay, sorry for the interruption. So now fourth point, possibility of monitoring sealed explosion-proof enclosed areas. So in visual stickers, yes, it is possible. Remote stickers, yes, you can monitor the sealed enclosed enclosures, but in thermography, it is not possible. Okay. Possibility of monitoring in explosion-proof enclosures. VFPD and FirePress, yes. Thermography, no. Connectivity with SCADA for centralized monitoring, you can do in FirePress, you cannot do in VFPD or you cannot do in thermography. Okay. Safe monitoring in high voltage and medium voltage panels. Safe monitoring is possible with VFPD and FirePress, but not with thermography, because if you open the panel for doing the thermography, you are already compromising the safety of the human who is taking the image. Okay, that is why it is not safe in thermography. Now comparison, and there is one more method with which people are doing thermography, that they are using the IR windows. Just remember, IR window can make visibility of only the joint which is directly accessible from that IR window, not the whole panel. There are so many joints, bends and turns inside the panel, and your camera cannot reach everywhere. Camera cannot reach the jaw connections. Camera cannot reach other busbar, bend, busbar chamber, etc. Okay. Now, comparison of possibility of errors and risk. Possibility of human error in monitoring, there is no possibility in FirePress and VFPD, but there is a possibility of human error in risk in thermography. Okay. Possibility of arc flash during monitoring, it is possible in thermography, because if you open the high voltage panel and do your inspection, there can be chances that because live parts are exposed to the atmosphere, somebody can get an arc flash because of induction. Okay, but it is not possible in VFPD and FirePress because it is independent of human intervention. Okay. Possibility of missing out overheating caused during the normal operation. During the normal operation, the temperature of the joint increases, reduces, increases, reduces. There are chances if you do it with thermography, you may miss the increased part. But if you are using VFPD or FirePress, you will not miss it. Yes, alert. If you talk about the alert will be missed in VFPD only. You will only get in the FirePress. But at least whenever you do the inspection, you will be able to see the joint was heated sometime back. But in thermography, it is absolutely not possible. Okay. Possibility of missing out detecting potential overheating in loose connection in overload conditions. It is possible in FirePress and VFPD, not possible in thermography. Possibility of missing out timely alert in case of potential overheating in loose condition and overload conditions. So there is a detecting and alert. Detecting is possible in both, but alert is possible only in FirePress, not in thermography and VFPD. Okay. So that was about the comparison. I'm sorry if it was boring. I'll try to make it more interesting next time, but this was best I could do for the comparison because I had to cover all the possibilities which are there in the scenario. Okay, conclusion. Arc flash is a real risk and needs to be addressed carefully. There are various causes of arc flash and loose connection is one of them. Loose connections can be monitored by monitoring the temperature of the joints. Among all available temperature monitoring techniques, firepress is most reliable and is best suited for the application. Okay. Firepress works earlier than any existing fire detection system. Firepress gives timely alert to maintenance personnel, unlike any other commonly used monitoring systems. Firepress is easy to install even in retrofitting applications. Firepress can easily be connected to SCADA or any other remote monitoring system. Streamer Electric AG, that is the company who is making Firepress, provides design, installation, training, and after-sales support for Firepress with the help of channel partners. And if you like me and my presentation, forget about the presentation. If you like me, there is a good news for you. I'll be the person who will be supporting you for the installation, commissioning, and all the training required for the Firepress. Okay. Thank you very much. That's all from my side.